Hey everybody, it's Chris here with Off-Road Farm, and today we're going to get high, or maybe lifted. Yeah, that's better. Today we're going to get lifted. So let's talk about the lift kit that we're going to put on this truck. Alright, so here at the back end, we're going to do a shackle flip, which is just what it sounds like. We're just going to flip this shackle upside down. So the biggest reason that I went with the shackle flip is because it's probably the best bang for your buck. Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive than, let's say, a lift block, but it also doesn't have a lot of the problems commonly associated with lift blocks like axle wrap. Now, you still have springs, so there's still the potential for some axle wrap, but it's not going to be as bad. It's a lot cheaper than doing like a 4-link kit. I think I'll have to look it up and just double check, but I think this was like 200 bucks. A 4-link kit for this was like $2 grand. So a lot of difference there. So this is probably not going to have as much articulation as a 4-link kit, but I'm okay with that for now. This is a gigantic vehicle. I just want to get it lifted, get some tires on it, and we'll see what it can do. We might play with this spring pack in the future. Alright, so to get started on this project, first thing we need to do is make sure everything that goes to our rear axle has got enough slack in it so that we can add an extra 4 inches between it and the frame. So if you haven't already, check all your brake lines. You're probably going to need to go ahead and disconnect those. Check your emergency brake cables. I'm going to be taking mine completely off because this axle is probably going to come completely out for me to do some other things to it. And then some of you may or may not have this guy. So how many of you guys know what this is? This is a load sensing brake valve. As you decreased or increased the payload in the bed of the truck, this brake valve, this lever here would change the valving in here and would put more or less brake fluid to your rear axle. So we need to get rid of this, which is no big deal, but all this needs to come out. So we're gonna have to break these lines loose. We got a couple things back here at the chunk we need to take loose so we can get all this stuff. So we're ready to take this axle out of here. As you can see, I've got the bad U-bolts. They got the thread sticking down here at the bottom. So while I'm in here doing this, I did get a U-bolt reversal kit from Off-Road Design as well. My jack stands weren't quite tall enough by just themselves, so I went and I got some big heavy pieces of wood, cribbed it up a little bit so I could jack that back end up so we can get started. Now, why so high? Well, keep in mind, whenever we get done with this, it's gonna have to be 4 inches taller. So I jacked it up till I got both of the wheels off the ground. Then I took a measurement to the back of the frame and I just added 4 inches to that. The nut on the bottom of these bolts is a 15/16 nut. Now, what you probably can't see in the video is how dirty, nasty, grimy these things are. A lot of rust. The threads look damaged in a couple places. So I'm kind of gonna see how hard they are to get off. So now that the axle's out of the way, next thing we need to do is drop this spring to release this bracket so we can knock it out of there and put the new one on. So you can't get this top bolt out because it goes out that way and it hits the plate. So we're gonna have to take this one out. All right, it's a 13/16 bolt head on the outside and a 7/8 nut on the inside. All right, so we're just gonna put this jack underneath here. We're not gonna lift it up. We're just gonna barely take some of the weight off. And when we do that, this bolt comes out of there really easy. So the sizes are the same, they're just reversed this time since the bolt's put in the other way. So 7/8 on the nut, 13/16 on the head. So we got the springs out of the way. Now we're ready to get rid of these old rear brackets with an air chisel. Remember, if you're going to be using an air chisel, I really recommend earplugs, ear protection of some kind, because it is loud and you got to have some eye protection. Now we'll just switch out to a punch and push them out. All right, so I'm going to use this bracket as a guide for drilling or reaming out these holes. The bracket and the holes don't line up perfectly, so I can't just run a bigger bit through the existing holes. So that's why I've got it clamped up here. We're just going to fix it real quick. So now I'm just going to treat some of this rusty frame. This is OSPO, it's just like a phosphoric acid rust dissolver, rust treatment. Now I'm just going to try to pull out this front bolt on this leaf spring pack so we can clean up these leaf springs. Since we got them most of the way out, let's go ahead and take them out and clean them up a little bit. After looking at these bushings, I think I need to replace them too. They look pretty bad. So we're ready to start putting this shackle flip back together now. We've got everything cleaned up and painted. Now let's install these brackets. Now, one nice thing about the off-road design kit, it does come with its own hardware. So it comes with all the bolts, nuts, and washers that you need. They are special pinch nuts, so you don't have to use any thread locking compound. I think they're good up to 5 uses is what the directions say. The directions also include the torque specifications that you need. So let's go ahead and let's throw this on the frame real quick.
So here are the 2 brackets that are going to go on the truck. Notice they are not identical, they're actually different. So the bracket on the right hand side of the screen, that is actually the driver's side bracket, and the bracket on the left hand side of the screen, that one is actually the passenger side bracket. Now the way that you can tell which one is which is the mounting point for the springs needs to be towards the front of the truck. So that's how you know which bracket goes on which side.
Now we're going to use a washer on both the bolt and the nut side. So here's a close-up of a pinch nut. See, it looks just a little bit different than a regular nut. And basically it tightens down on the thread, so you don't have to use a second nut as a locker. You don't have to worry about any like thread locking compound, or if you use like a nylock locking nut, you don't have to worry about it getting hot and that nylon melting out, and then all of a sudden you lose your locking feature. Now that we've got everything snugged up, we're gonna go back and we're gonna torque everything down. The torque spec per off-road design on these is 38 foot-pounds. Let's get this spring back on the truck. Now, before I got started, I went ahead, I took all of my greasable bolts, coated them in a little bit of grease, ran them inside the bushings just to kind of help slick everything up a little bit. Where we're actually going to start back here at the shackle flip, we're going to put the shackle on first, then we're going to lift the spring up, we're going to put the rear of the leaf into that shackle, and that will kind of hold everything and steady it around a little bit so we can put it into the front. You're probably going to need a floor jack of some kind. I've got one here, my spring's just rested on it to kind of hold it in place. These are not just going to slip right in, these bushings are tight, and you are going to have to put a little bit of pressure on it, and you're definitely going to have like a dead blow to hammer them in there. Whenever you're putting your shackles in, make sure you get them right. Since we upgraded to the off-road design super shackle, this closed in part needs to go towards the back of the truck. If you're reusing your stock shackles, I think you can do them either way, it doesn't matter. But with these upgraded ones, the closed in parts, it's got to be towards the back. All right, this front eye is the worst. You really got to beat on this one. Now keep in mind, it's really tight. So we need to make sure that we account for as this comes up, since our back is fixed, it's going to want to pivot and not go straight up. So because of that, we actually need to start this out before we start hammering it in with that eye just a little bit forward. I think that's pretty close. We can probably work with that. So we're going to use our jack to put a little bit of up pressure on it. I don't think we're close enough, but we're going to try. Well, it started. There we go. Now just like with the shackle flip bracket, if you get the ORD greasable bushings and bolts, the bolts come already drilled, and they even come with pinch nuts, and they come galvanized, which is pretty nice. So now we're just going to go around and torque everything. The torque spec per off-road design is 72 foot-pounds. So when I initially jacked the truck up, I didn't quite get it high enough. It was like maybe a ½ inch too short. So all I'm doing is I'm just taking the floor jack, jacking up the springs right behind the axle. Only need just a little bit, then I can slide it in there and center it on that center pin. There we go. So now it's time to put on our U-bolts. Now I haven't painted my top U-bolt plate here, mainly because it's probably coming back off before I'm ready to really tighten everything down for good. But if you're ready, make sure you get these good and snug, try to tighten them evenly. So just a quick overview on the project that we did today. We did a 4-inch shackle flip, we did a 4.5-inch super shackle, plus we also upgraded to greasable bolts and greasable bushings. All of this stuff was from Off-Road Design. I paid full price for this kit. Overall, I liked the kit. I thought everything was really nice. The shackle flip bracket fit perfect. All of the welds looked really good. It's a big, heavy, beefy design. It looks really strong. The super shackle, same thing there. Good looking welds, thick, heavy metal. It looks like it can really take a bunch of abuse. Now, if you don't want to do the super shackle, you can reuse your stock shackle with this flip. Just keep in mind, if you have a heavier rig, or if you're kind of planning on beating it off-road pretty hard, they can bend. This super shackle, I don't think that thing's gonna bend. Now, if you do get the kit, it comes with all the hardware that you need. So if you just get the shackle flip, you'll get the bolts to bolt it to the frame, and you will just reuse all your stock hardware. If you get the super shackle, it just comes as the shackle. If you upgrade to the greasable bolt and bushings, obviously you're gonna get new bolts and new bushings with that. So one of the extra things I did during this project was I did freshen up my leaf pack. I went ahead and took it off, took it apart, cleaned up all the rust, did a little bit of rust dissolver, and also gave it a fresh coat of paint. I'll link to a video right up here as soon as I get it done. Just a quick short video about how to take a leaf pack apart, clean it up, and put it all back together. I also did the U-bolt reversal plate while I had this apart. And in the beginning of the video, when I was taking the U-bolts off to get this rear axle out so I could get everything apart, if you notice, the U-bolts came down from the top and the thread stuck down, there was a plate on the bottom. Well, that's not good for a couple of reasons. That big plate sits there at the bottom and decreases your ground clearance. Plus that plate holds mud and crud and water, and it just starts to rust everything out. So we went ahead and we did a U-bolt reversal. So our U-bolts are gonna come from the bottom and go up. Now keep in mind, if you have an actual 1-ton and you want to do the U-bolt reversal, you do have to have some sort of lift. The reason for that is because the spring perches on a 1-ton are a little bit narrower than they are on a 3/4 or a 1/2 ton. And because of that, because they're just a little bit more narrow, you have to have some sort of lift on there, so as your springs compress, that plate doesn't hit your frame. And as always, thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate you guys. Just do me a favor, if you like this video, hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more like it, go ahead and hit the subscribe button.